Hi, it's Chris Grimm, and this is Deep Work Fast every Tuesday at 3 p.m. Pacific time. I'm either here live or we drop a pre-recorded video always. Well, not always. I kind of go over, but my intention is 20 minutes or less, where I bring you tools, concepts, ideas, so that you can be your best at home and at work in all the roles that you play: partner, employer, boss, coworker, parent, all of them. Okay, so this week I am focusing on a topic that is usually very unpopular. People don't like this term, self-sabotage. And so that's the perfect thing for me to focus on, because you can't ignore this, or, well, you can try to ignore it, but I don't want you to. And I really like to get people's awareness around this. So I want you to know it exists. I want you to know what it is before you sabotage yourself. Now, most of the time, people aren't sabotaging themselves on purpose. Nobody wakes up in the morning like deciding they're going to do something dumb, right? Like to hurt your own success in your career, make a career limiting move, make a bad decision, spend too much money, too much time, ruin a relationship, right? Most people don't do that on purpose. I realize there are some people who might, but let's talk about the rest of us who don't do that. So I want to talk about self-sabotage because there's the obvious kind, which we're going to talk about. And then there's the kind that is not so obvious and sometimes is actually kind of woven in or subtly a part of something that you do well, or that you have done well for a long time, and maybe it's not working anymore. So first, let's talk about the obvious self-sabotage, which most people can identify in other people, but don't always know that they do it themselves. And so in coaching, we call that a blind spot, right? When everybody else knows that you do certain things and it's not great, not effective, hurts your credibility, hurts the success of your team or a project, but you might not know it. Or maybe you're in denial about it, like people have given you the feedback, but you just keep doing the thing. So let's talk about those obvious things. Habitual bad decisions, habitual procrastination, like waiting a really long time to make decisions that you and other people know need to be made. And sometimes even knowingly, we know that the longer we push it off, maybe the more expensive it's going to be for you or the business. Right? So habitual bad or slow decision making, that is an obvious way people sabotage themselves. Applying the wrong method or tool to a situation. So let's say you have a customer that's angry, and you know it, other people know it. And if you don't like conflict, you may choose to send them an email, or instead of having direct communication, you might find a passive way to communicate with that person, or have someone else do it instead of calling them, apologizing, resolving the issue, and moving forward, right? So in that case, that would be the wrong method of addressing the issue, which most likely isn't going to work. It might actually piss them off more, right? Unintended consequences. But that's what self-sabotage is, right? It's where we, with sometimes good intention, undermine our own success and the success of our team. The other thing that I see is a really common, very observable thing is when, like I was saying about decision making, but in all situations, we don't pace with whatever is going on around us, right? So maybe there's a lot of urgency in the business for something to happen, and you're not feeling ready. And I see this all the time in coaching, where all of a sudden people start giving me feedback and they're like, oh my gosh, like we can't get that person to move. They're just not moving to action. They have all these reasons why they're not ready, or they avoid the situation. So it's the wrong pace for the culture, the situation, etc. So like I said, those are pretty easy to observe things. And like I said, most of the time, Well, first of all, if you have trusting, reliable relationships with the people around you at home or at work, most likely they're giving you that feedback and you may not be listening because you might have other thoughts that are either embedded in your style or subconscious fears that are bigger than this situation. And so you stay, heels in the ground, right? I'm not ready. I'm not going to make that decision, even though you're all wanting to me to make it and people are working around me. And the reason we call that self-sabotage is because even though in the short term you may get what you want, or things might go your way, long term, it's probably damaging something, right? It's most likely sabotaging your credibility. It might be hurting the business, even though short term it might be a good way to function. Um, yeah, so not great. I also want to talk about the not so obvious ways this works because there are more hidden, seemingly innocuous ways this plays out than the things that are overt and observable, right? So, the not so obvious self sabotage is often, like I mentioned before, woven into your style over time. And so, and related to success. So let me just give you some examples because I've got a lot of use cases, and don't worry, I'm not naming you around this, right? So I'm going to give you a great example because this person I coached a long time ago and we had to work on this. So boss calls and said, I really need you to coach this person. This guy for years and years and years, which was the boss's clutch player. What that means is that, in the 11th hour of the quarter or the end of a time period, that guy could close the big deals to push their numbers right over the line. And so that's a sports term, by the way, of clutch player, which is the player who shows up usually like at the end of the game and makes the play all the time that might even seem impossible, high pressure. The only way we can win is if we get the touchdown or if we score the goal or whatever. And in business, right, sometimes we have those people. Not just in go-to-market organizations, by the way, that can happen in any part of your business, but we're getting towards a deadline, the pressure's on, it's seemingly impossible, like we're not going to meet our goal. And that person comes in and is the hero, right? They make it happen. And so in this situation that I'm sharing with you, that boss had said, you know what, this guy's been the clutch player for years and years and years, like always showing up and just making it happen when we need it to happen. And I go, okay, so what's the problem? Well, the problem is that's happening less and less. And now he's not really helpful on our team because our problems are bigger and more complicated than they used to. So we really can't wait to the 11th hour and look for the Hail Mary or the miracle anymore. And because our problems are so complicated, we really need people in that role who are going to bring people along, you know, during the quarter or during the time period, not just wait to the end and try to just be the single hero. I need the whole team to do it. So, of course, like all coaching, we do 360-degree feedback. We assess the situation because I'm always looking for, like, what is the truth? Or at least what are the versions of this story that are the truth so I can help the person. But I'm also looking for, like I said, blind spots, like, because oftentimes blind spots show up here and the person is self-sabotaging, but like I said, they're not doing it on purpose. They're probably doing what they believe is the right thing. That's how you and I work, right? We show up, we do our best. And if for years and years and years, something has worked for us, we're probably going to keep on doing that. And I'll tell you what, that's what was happening. This person was using all the normal superpowers that he had been using for years. And just like the boss had explained to me, their business had changed and not overnight. But The deals were longer sales cycle. The technology was more complicated to sell. On the buyer side, there were lots of people who needed to be involved in that decision. And so it was getting nearly impossible for him to close the deal at the end of the quarter all by himself and be the hero. And not to mention, on the internal team, he had unintentionally, I believe, made a lot of enemies, right? Because the other team members told me he's not a team player. He holds the information about the customer close to the vest. He's seemingly concocting a strategy, but he doesn't include all of us in the process. So after we collected all that data and I played it back to the person, some of it he could admit, but some of it he didn't even know he was doing. He was just doing what he always did. And because for years he was incentivized and encouraged to do that, he was just doing it, even though he wasn't getting the same outcomes. And it was causing problems. That is an example of self-sabotage. Now, when you get feedback, this is where I was saying, sometimes we get the feedback, but we're still in denial. And so in my blog this week, I identified 3 things that often are a part of the undermining of your success beyond the feedback from other people and the most obvious observable things. Because just because I gave that guy the feedback and he heard what other people were saying doesn't mean he could actually quickly change his behavior. He had been functioning like that for 20 plus years. That's really difficult to change. And I want you to think about that, because if you've been working for a while, most likely you've got the things that you do consciously, but then you've got a lot of autopilot. They're just a part of the way you do your job. And if you're good at it, you're just doing it. So for things to change, we get that feedback. First of all, we've got to deal with the subconscious issues around self-worth. Because when we start to try and change, specifically things that we're doing well, or we think we're doing well, and we've gotten lots of feedback around, your self-worth is going to pop up and start to go, whoa, whoa, whoa. I knew how to do that. I've been the hero for all these years. Why are people wanting me to change my thing? I know what I'm doing. And if we as an adult try and start to change what we've been doing for a long time, most likely trying to get out of that comfort zone is going to be very uncomfortable. That's why we call it a comfort zone, by the way. What we do all the time is where we're comfortable. It's that, right? It's the zone of comfort. When you step out of that, it feels awkward. It feels weird. It feels like I don't know what I'm doing. It potentially makes you get triggered into imposter syndrome. All of those kind of internal issues are going to put on your internal, most likely fight or flight system, but at least your alarm system of like, uh-oh. And our egos are deeply attached. Our identity is attached to our work and our success at work. And so then what happens, the third thing in the blog, so I really want you to check that out. It's just a short read, but I think hearing it from me and reading it will help you start to process what this is for yourself and other people so that you have more awareness. This third thing is that it creates what's called dissonance. And that means, all the old stuff that's in here, right? All the old thoughts and processes that were driving your autopilot. All the things you didn't have to think about, you just did them. And like I said, if you got feedback that you were doing it well, you probably repeated it over and over again. And then you try to overlay all this feedback and new, and most likely those are going to clash with each other. And that creates a phenomenon called dissonance or cognitive dissonance. It's where on the inside you go, whoa, this is too much. Like you might feel confused. It might, stop you in your tracks and freeze you a little bit because you don't know how to do the new well enough. And you want to default to the old stuff. but you've now gotten all this feedback and you know doing it the old way isn't working. So I want you to come with me back to that story I was telling you, because after that guy got his feedback and we started to work through all those potential mind games that he might play with himself, he and I started working through it. And the way you change that so that you don't then sabotage yourself more. By the way, because what happens is that as we're going through the mental gymnastics of, I don't want to feel like an imposter. How do I deal with this new situation? What do I do with all this feedback that I thought I was doing the right thing? And clearly that's causing a problem. Oftentimes, if we're in our default mode and our fight or flight, wow, is triggered, we often project onto other people, right? I'm sure you've seen it 1,000 times, right? We get feedback that's negative or constructive, and our defense mechanisms come up. And what we want to do is find flaw in all of those other people and all of those other things. So, of course, that guy I was telling you about, his first response was, "Oh, really? Well, next quarter, let's see who's going to close those deals." Defensive. A little bit of truth, but not the whole truth anymore, because more than 50% of the time, he actually wasn't able to be the single hero anymore. So that's not productive. And it actually sabotages you more, because that creates a wall between you and the people who gave you the feedback, and most likely creates a whole other set of behaviors that don't feel great and don't actually get us into a new way of functioning, so that you're responding to the feedback and changing things in a way where everybody goes, "Oh, wow, that person can take feedback. They want to be on this team. They want to be productive. Let's all move into the new ways of doing things." Well, most of us struggle in the process. So like I was saying, we had to work through, what are the self-worth issues that are triggered when we get feedback and we know that set of behaviors isn't working for us anymore. How can we deal with comfort zone versus discomfort, right? What do we have to learn how to do in a new way? That guy I was telling you about, right? He had to kind of slow down. He also couldn't wait to the last minute anymore. So the planning and stretching out the process and including more people at first felt uncomfortable and annoying to him. Why do I need to go meet with those people? I can close this deal later and I just actually don't need them to give me their 2 cents. And I was like, well, I guess you do. So let's figure out what the right new way is so you can feel confident and the other people get what they need and they want. And this is how we start to consciously avoid self sabotage. It takes intention and awareness. And I'm creating that awareness with you now. So hopefully, this is going to inspire you to consider the ways that you, either obviously or maybe not so obviously, might actually be working against yourself. I don't want you to wait until someone else gives you the feedback. If you can possibly, like, be honest with yourself, be aware of what's happening, think about a great way to do this is to think about where changes have happened in your family or your business, where the old ways of functioning maybe aren't working as well as they were working before. And when you think about trying to do new things, or you try to do new things, is it triggering you, right, in your self-worth, like creating imposter syndrome, or triggering you to think, oh my God, maybe I'm not good at this anymore? Is it pushing on your comfort zone and requiring that you learn something new? And if that's true, when you try to learn something new, are you having any kind of dissonance where it sometimes fatigues you, or you get frustrated with yourself, and maybe you need some help to do that? Okay, I know this is a heavy topic. I know lots of people don't like it, but it is real. And the more change at work and at home, most likely at some point in time, you're going to have to face this. And like I said, I want you to be in charge of it, not wait until someone else tells you that it's here. So if you need help with this, you know where to find me. Again, get the blog. Make sure you check that out. Also on social, I've been pushing out reading material and other articles to help you as quickly as possible, because when you're ready to learn something new and make change, I don't want you to have to wait. That's what deep work fast is about. Okay, have a great day. I hope this was helpful to you. I'd love feedback if you ever want to leave me a message or you have topics that you wish I would cover. Tell me, and I'll see you next week. Okay, bye.